Welcome back to the CB550 build series. I'm not too sure what to call it, but I do have some quick updates to share. First off, I mentioned in the last episode that I plan to move, and as of the end of September, I've successfully done so. These last few weeks have just been the annoying process that is moving, which took up all my time and money. Last episode ended with the CB550 successfully running and driving, but I then parked it up in my storage unit for a little bit as I took care of the paperwork and amassed up the parts to fix the remaining major issues, which include that heavy oil leak, the lighting system, the brakes, the charging system, and the controls, among other things. So let's jump right in. As always, step one is to remove the seat. And since I'd be riding the bike, I decided to reinstall the velocity stacks as they at least have a metal screen in them, for some filtering. At this point, I had the new plate, which had a disappointing new Excelsior design, and yeah, I don't like it. With the original gold design, it was easy to see if a plate was from New York, but this looks generic, like Massachusetts. The wires behind the headlight bucket look like this, and it's probably dangerous and short circuit prone. Now at the time, I wasn't really ready to tackle the lighting, so I just insulated off the wires for now. And while the headlight was off, I found some fitting bolts from my collection as it was missing too when I got it. Now missing bolts is a common theme for this bike. The controls both only had one bolt in each perch, so they would rotate around annoyingly when you would ride the bike. Now my hardware stash easily fixed that problem though. The thing is, not everything is as easy as just replacing bolts. So as you may remember, the CB550 was still leaking at the end of the last episode, and as you can see right now, that problem didn't just magically go away. Now back when I had the SV1000, I used this red gasket maker to stop at least one of the many oil leaks, and it was successful. So I gave it a shot on the CB550, and it's not the most elegant fix, but then again, this isn't a very elegant bike, so let's just see if this works. Yeah, it didn't work at all. All it did was make the leak go up and over the silicone. I had ridden the bike to work for one day, but the leak was still way too aggressive, and I really wasn't sure why exactly. So I just parked it up and ordered an eBay oil pump in the meantime. I also ordered another rebuild kit and a set of oil pump dowels, just to rule out everything. Just change everything out, see what works, see what doesn't work. Old dowels on top have this weird taper effect, and it kind of looks like scoring. I don't know if that's consequential to making a leak, but I just replaced them anyway. So I rebuilt the second pump just like I did the first one, but this time around, instead of using no gasket maker or no gasket at all, I used some anaerobic gasket maker around the oil passages. Just little dabs here and there. I actually used this stuff on the K100 oil pump with success. And just for FYI, there's actually no gasket for this maiden surface for some reason. And finally, I very carefully torqued all bolts to spec evenly. Now, of course, when you're dealing with anything with the oil system, you gotta rig up your makeshift oil pressure light just to make sure everything's working. Now the oil pump leak was completely gone. which I was extremely happy about. But funnily enough, there's a leak from this bowl hole, which I'm gonna need one of you guys to explain because I'm not too sure how this works. And it only leaks when there's oil pressure, which is why I'm cranking the starter here. You know, I just stuck a bolt in there and put red silicone around it. It's a very slow leak now, very much usable, but it's still there, so I'll have to figure that out later. Right, so the CB550 has one 2-piston caliper, or would you call it two, or is it one? I don't know. It's like this weird outdated design that only really uses brake fluid on one side of the caliper and a bracket to kind of clamp the other side of the rotor. So it's really like just a 1-piston, but it uses like, I don't know, some type of design that pulls the other side in when it pushes the other side. It's kind of weird. In any case, the brakes needed attention, so I opted for a rebuild kit since it's so cheap for these bikes. You also get a whole lot for what you pay for. You see that broken bleeder valve at the top? Earlier in this week, I tried to bleed the brakes, just to get them to work a little bit better while I was waiting for the kit, but it was seized in there and it just snapped right off. Now, honestly, I was perplexed by this caliper design. It's wacky as hell. So wacky that when you take it off, it kind of looks like a comical dinosaur. So you can kind of see what I mean with this caliper. You pull the lever, the fluid pushes one pad into the rotor, but it also pulls the entire assembly away, which pulls the other pad on the other side into the rotor. Like there's a bolt with a spring on the top that you use to maintain distance as the pads wear away. With the more important things sorted out, I decided that it was time to address the lighting system. Starting with the ace well gauge, by getting rid of it. Yeah, I just don't know how this thing works. I don't really like how it looks that much, and if I have the stock gauges, I could just study a wiring diagram and figure out where all these wires go instead of trying to figure out something that doesn't even belong here. Boom, stock gauges, stock dummy lights, and a drag bar that I had laying around my house. I wanted to compromise between clip-ons and the typical upswept, bullhorn bars. So I just tested this bar that I already had in my basement. Continuing on with all the tasks in the electrical department, I removed all the extra wiring that was associated with that ace well gauge. That way I could actually understand what the hell I was looking at. Eventually, I managed to get everything hooked up. I had low beam, high beam, brake, but the issue was that the blinkers wouldn't blink and the taillight running light wouldn't come on. Both turns out to be easy fixes. The taillight had a blown bulb filament for the running light, and only the brake light worked. Simply replaced the bulb. And with these aftermarket turn signals likely having less draw and heat, they likely just can't make the flasher relay trip. I had the same issue and solution on my Honda Rebel. Just go to any auto store and get an electromechanical relay. Oh, and the RPM gauge worked too. But it needed some time to get used to moving again because it was moving kind of laggy at first, but now it's all good. So the charging system, right? Remember, for some goddamn reason, the alternator wires were cut. So during this time, I would, ride the bike for like a day or two and then take the battery out and charge it overnight. Now, not only was that as annoying as it sounds, but now that I have all the lights on the bike working, it would probably be a bad idea to ride the bike around with all the lights and stuff working with a battery that wouldn't charge. Unfortunately, I absolutely cannot find that male connector for the charging system on the harness anywhere online. So, I just had to make the individual connections myself with spade terminals. All of the charging wires were now connected, and I bought a voltmeter just to monitor if the battery was actually charging, over the next few days, just so I could know. Between 12 and 15 volts is what you want, depending on when, what RPM the engine is at. So over the next few days, I indeed confirmed that my wiring was successful, and the battery no longer needed to come out on a daily basis. Now let's jump into something a little bit different. Very interesting, definitely different. So my actual job, while remaining vague, is somewhat related to motorcycles, and through a series of events, I was actually able to relieve a random recovery yard of this Honda CBR front end. I stumbled upon it, and it was like, in my head, I was like, oh man, that's fucking awesome. I literally have a Honda. It's like fate, But when I went to the yard owner, I pretty much just played it cool. Like, hey pal, you got a lot of trash in here, huh? That front end, I could take it off your hands if you want me to. And he didn't give a shit about it, with a score. I mean, clearly the guy was not a biker because he didn't give a rat's ass about that thing. So I loaded it up. I loaded it up so fast that he didn't even have time to think about it. Score. I knew it was from a modern Honda sport bike. I mean, it has Honda logos on it. I knew it was involved in a wreck as per the completely jacked up wheel and literally split in half frame. And I knew it was sitting here for very long because the condition of the paint sitting out in the sun on the fender. It took me a couple days after I brought it home, but eventually I found the time to actually tear this thing apart and see if there's anything salvageable from it. So I'm about to take apart this front end. This thing is insane, the way it just ripped the frame off. Like, you'd think with damage like that, like this wheel will be destroyed, or these forks will be like clearly destroyed. But it looks kind of tweaked. Like, I don't know if you can see that, but I'm hoping that it's just the triple, like the stem that's bent and not the fork legs itself. I mean, I'm gonna take this whole thing apart, throw out the garbage. This wheel is probably garbage. I mean, if it was just this, but the other side is worse. Yeah, this is, forget it, this is trash. But I might be able to save these rotors, this axle, whatever parts I could save, even the hardware, But the main thing I'm hoping that is good is these fork legs, which I won't know until I take them apart and see if they're straight or not. It's off like this fairing stay, whatever's left of the fairing itself. If I could get a decent amount of parts, then replacing the things that I can't use if I ever did a fork swap. So even if I can't save these legs, if I could get one of them, I only have to buy one from eBay. If that makes sense, because I got all the controls and stuff. I mean, this thing is frozen in time. It just ripped off the frame. So as it was is what I have. Yeah, I actually got kind of distracted by the dashboard. I ended up stripping the wires to see if I could, split up the wires according to what needs ground and what needs power to see if I could turn on most, if not all, of the dashboard. And I did it. Alright, back to the actual task. With things a little bit more clean, you can see, this frame got completely ripped in half. That's just nuts to me. And if you didn't know, sport bike frames are hollow, as you can see. Unfortunately, I very quickly deduced that one of the fork legs was indeed bent. I have a tire which would help with mocking up a 17-inch wheel if I went that route, a functioning dashboard if I wanted to use it, one good fork leg, a good complete triple tree, complete hardware, a steering damper that would have to somehow be adapted to the CB frame if I used it, a full set of controls including a hydraulic clutch, a full braking system, which is like a score unto itself, including the hardware, and of course, I got a horn. But seriously, here's the verdict, right? This is actually a great score for absolutely free. When it comes to fork swaps, I basically learned that for a good complete front end with controls and brake calipers, but not even a wheel, from a bike around this model year, it's gonna run you almost 600 or 700 bucks. And the higher end being for forks with no leaking seals. But again, you'll still have to buy that wheel, which will be like another $250 on top of that. And it's even more expensive piecemeal. To buy, and then on top of that, you gotta buy the hardware too. So it gets expensive, like $1,000. Now with this find, if I want to do a fork swap, I would just have to buy a naked rim, since I already have rotors, spacers, the axle, and the hardware for the wheel. I'd also have to buy one fork leg to replace the bent one, and of course I need the conversion stem as well from Cognito Moto. Clean up all the parts, and that's a super cheap front end swap, like extremely cheap. And at this point in time where I was taking apart the front end, I didn't really have plans to do a fork swap on a CB550, but this makes a fork swap extremely viable. Really, the suspension is fine to me, but it's just a break-in that sucks. And this would allow me to definitely solve that problem. Cognitomoto even makes a conversion hub that would allow me to run the original 19-inch spoked wheel with the CBR front end and brakes. So you get that stock look, especially because the upside down forks are still silver, they're not gold. And you know, if I use the original wheel, it would be a 17-inch alloy wheel instead of a 19-inch spoke, which would kind of look kind of janky. Now look, if there was one thing that was recommended to me the most, it would have to be the Dyna S electronic ignition conversion kit. Now, this kit comes with high output coils, the new rotor with a magnet and sensors, as well as new spark plug leads. This kit will replace the tired old weak coils, you know, to give you a stronger spark, the finicky points, and the brittle old spark plug leads. So step one, remove the coils. Once you get the coils off, you have to cut the wires directly from them to reuse on the new coils. Or you could just use new wires, but you know, this is much simpler. They give you ring terminals to connect the wires to the new coils, so just crimp or solder them. Very simple. The spark plug cables are not pre-cut or ended, so you have to do that yourself. I tested the continuity of each lead when I made it by making them part of a circuit with my test light. Once the new high output coil setups were installed, the difference was immediately apparent due to the stronger spark. Okay, so the following morning before work, I went to change out the points for the magnet setup. Now you have to take off the original rotor from the advancing assembly and put on the new black one with the magnet embedded into it. Admittedly, I was in a hurry because it was before work, so I didn't show how to set timing on the engine, but honestly, there's plenty of videos on YouTube for that. just one more task to handle, and it's a small quick job, but it's an important job because remember, I was planning to park this bike on the street, and that was the whole point of buying it basically. The original brake disc isn't drilled, so I would have to replace it with one that was, so I could actually use a disc lock for security while it was parked on the street. Very simple job. I mean, the most sketchy part was just actually suspending the bike in the air. I mean, look at this monstrosity I made. Now this was pretty interesting though. The rotor bolts actually go all the way through the wheel and meet the nut on the other side. It's not just like, you know, a threaded hub like modern bikes, you just drive a tiny bolt through it. And that was the last of the wrenching. I recorded a motovlog, you know, just kind of talking about the bike and how it stands as of the beginning of October. So I'll step back and just let my live self, you know, ride and talk about the bike. Now it's been a pleasure narrating the wrenching, but hope you enjoy the ride. Yo, I hope you enjoyed that little wrenching session, or should I say the culmination of a bunch of wrenching sessions. Right now I'm in the middle of beautiful Maspeth, beautiful carcinogenic, polluted industrial Maspeth. Anyway, this thing has been doing pretty fine. The only thing is that oil leak is still existent. It's slow. You can see that little drop under there. Brakes work fine, although I'm more leaning towards doing that front end swap because these brakes suck. They're garbage. Like, unironically trash. The key's already turned. Let's get it started and go for a ride. There you go. Kick starts, you know, 1, 2, maybe 3 kicks. Depends on what cycle you get it on. But yeah, while we're lane splitting like this, legally, totally legally, that's one thing that this bike is really good at, lane splitting. Like, you know, with FC1, man, I got those wide dirt bike bars, and it's just like, it's kind of nerve-wracking because the FC1 is a big bike. That's a big old bike, and I normally see it. I normally notice it after I ride either this or the K100. Tiny bike, very low also. This bike is a lot lower than the FC1, especially the handlebars. So you don't really worry about hitting somebody's mirror with the handlebars like you would on a normal, like, tall naked bike. Because like I said, they're shorter, the bars are shorter, and also lower. Acceleration, I mean, I'll show you up here if I could. This is the BQE right here, I believe, pretty sure. If I get around these cars or get ahead of them, I could do a little bit of acceleration. This guy, yeah, he's gonna run that way. Good job, kid. I mean, it goes. It's not fast. It certainly sounds good. Now, the reason why I kind of lengthen my shifts like that is because this bike likes to pop out if you don't really actually commit to a shift. It doesn't pop out of gear while you're accelerating, as you can see, but if you like kind of try to do it fast like a modern bike, it'll be like, nah. Tack works. Speedo doesn't work, but only because the fucking Speedo cable down there, like the mountain bolt, is stripped out. I don't know how you managed to strip that out. It's one little bolt. Who the hell would crank down the Speedo cable that tight? Like, what are you scared it's gonna come out and catastrophically fail the bike? It's a Speedo cable. You don't need that much fucking nutty torque on it. But I'm just like, well, this is not big enough of a problem for me to care Suspension is very plush. It's sprung. This bike is sprung kind of light, so it has a tendency to bottom out when you hit like a real meaty bump. Not even bump, a dip more so. But like when you hit like gradual bumps, it feels really comfortable. Only thing is like these, like I took the clip-ons off because I mean, this, don't get me wrong, this is way more comfortable than them fucking clip-ons. Like the way this bike is set up, like you got a low seat height with clip-ons, and your feet are right under you. When you when you got your legs like in this position, you're sitting low and you're reaching down low. It's like you're sitting on your fucking balls. The thing that I like about this seat is that it's like cushioned all the way to the front, so I could kind of sit way up here, you know, and it's fine. That New York traffic for you, man. The braking, man, that's where this bike just falls apart. That's where this bike just you got a 2-piston little piece of shit beep 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 piston up front, I mean caliper up front, and you get like the world's touchiest drum brake in the back. So every time you touch it, it's just, you know, just locks up if you so much as breathe on it. So it's very hard to modulate a drum brake. I mean, it's easy if there's nothing going on. Like you could just kind of modulate the brake to a stop. It won't lock up on you. But man, if anything makes you panic brake with this drum brake out back, forget it. You're skidding, and you better know how to control it. Cut through Williamsburg. You know, people do that, and it's like if I was a little bit closer, it'd just be like, you know. Just gotta let them know. Where the fuck all this water come from? Jesus Christ. Hope that was water. Alright, let's see what we can do about this. Totally legal. So what I'm thinking, I mean, I moved, like I probably said at the beginning of this episode, I moved out. But I'm still gonna be going back to my parents' house to wrench. I'm definitely gonna move forward with this front end swap because I just need better brakes. I really need better brakes. You know, and also the fact that I mean I'm pretty much like 80% there to a fork swap in lieu of getting all those parts for fucking free. You know, I'm pretty much there, so why waste the opportunity? You know, just letting those parts kind of sit there. But I mean, also like, if I want to kind of like keep that old school look to it, what the fuck? I mean, I understand him, but you, what the? We'll never be able to do that on the FZ. Whenever, at whatever point that I do another episode for this build, it's more than likely going to be the front end swap, because everything else on this bike is pretty much minor. Like pretty much all the things work. Although if I use the turn signal in this video and the front left didn't work, it's because the bulb blew out. It's nothing to do with the wiring. Like, well, the back left works and the rights work. This man is carrying a 2x4 in a stroller. I wanted that little 2x4 like started out as a little like a little splinter. Hope you enjoyed that build episode. Kind of in between living spaces at this point, but the good thing is that my new space kind of facilitates like creation more so than my old full house. They're loving it. I'll see you guys on the next one. I'm just kind of roaming around here. Might go shoot some pics in Dumbo. Funnily enough, that would make for a more interesting video than this. Alright, I'm done. Bye. See ya.